Hello, everyone. Merry Christmas and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, 27-year veteran of the NYPD. I'm hoping everyone is having so far today, and whatever time zone you're in. I see a lot of people from Canada, from the West Coast, from across the pond, and I hope everyone is having a wonderful Christmas morning or afternoon or whatever it might be, and enjoying your time with friends and family, as only this time of the year can deliver the warmth and the love that we all hope to have on Christmas Day. And wishing everyone a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about, and coming up on the 27th, December 27th at 11 a.m. Utah time, Jodi Hildebrandt will be going to court for a waiver hearing, similar to the same hearing that Ruby Franke went to. But what we may expect, what's a distinct possibility, is a plea deal in this case. We already know that Ruby Franke pled guilty to 4 out of the 6 charges. 2 of the charges were dropped as part of the plea deal agreement. Is it possible that Jodi Hildebrandt will get a similar type of deal? I think it is, because even though Ruby Franke has agreed to testify against Jodi Hildebrandt, I think the prosecutors would rather cut a deal with this case to alleviate the children from having to testify. That's just my opinion and the opinion of many people. But it also may be that Jodi Hildebrandt is looked upon as the worst of the 2 co-defendants. Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt, of course, are co-defendants. However, it is looked upon, I believe, by the prosecution and many, that Jodi Hildebrandt is the worst of the 2. So hang on to your seats. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off the cuff.
There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch Michael by there.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope I didn't drag you away from family activities. I told my family I'm just going to take an hour. It's just an hour away from you, and I need to get on the air and talk to my fans, my friends, my subscribers. I feel like it's just a great experience to talk to you across the world, across the globe. That used to be the thing for ABC Sports, bringing you the constant variety of sports. The thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. But this isn't that. This is bringing you the constant variety of true crime. Nothing about true victory or agony of defeat, but a lot of different stories, the human emotions that go with it. Muggsy Siegel, love that name. Thank you so much for the $2 super sticker. The man, the myth, the legend. I love that name, Muggsy Siegel. Beautiful name. Thank you, Muggsy. Merry Christmas. So we're getting back Jodi Hildebrandt. And of course, here's a picture on the screen of Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke. And they became, of course, partners in that podcast Connections, that organization Connections, that did family therapy and therapy for children. And when you think about it, it was a horrendous thing, because they were, of course, doing much more harm than good. I don't see that they were doing any good with what the advice that she was given. So Jodi Hildebrandt, her next scheduled court appearance is on December 27th, which is Wednesday. This will be her first appearance since her co-defendant, Ruby Franke, took a plea deal and agreed to testify against Hildebrandt. A lot of legal analysts say they have good reason to believe that the prosecutors see Hildebrandt as the woman who's more to blame, but that doesn't mean she'll serve any more prison time than Franke if she pleads guilty. Two defendants charged with the exact same crimes, but who is more at fault? That's the question. Franke's attorney issued a statement before her guilty plea saying Hildebrandt isolated Ruby away from her family and distorted her sense of morality. Initially, Miss Franke believed that Jodi Hildebrandt had the insight to offer a path to continual improvement. Miss Hildebrandt took advantage of this quest and twisted it into something heinous. The statement reads, a former prosecutor not connected to this case said it's common for county attorneys to offer a plea deal to the person who they believe is the least culpable defendant. That's one of the things that prosecutors do all across this country. They offer the plea to the least culpable person. But in this case, I believe the two persons on that screen are equally as culpable. So how could they say who the least culpable is? So when we talk about Ruby Franke and the fact that she pled guilty to 4 out of the 6 charges, and those charges carry with them a sentence of 1 to 15 years. Is it possible that Ruby Franke could do 60 years in prison for the pleading guilty to those charges? That's extremely doubtful because, first of all, again, this is a plea deal. And who would plead guilty and then do 60 years? I think that's really not a possibility. And I think her attorneys know that. And that's why they made this plea deal. And part of this plea deal is that she agreed to testify against Ruby Franke. Will she? I really firmly believe that on Wednesday, Jodi Hildebrandt is going to get a deal also, going to cut a deal. And not because her conduct or that she's any less guilty, but her conduct is actually more egregious because it seemed that she had some mind control, not just on Ruby Franke, although Ruby Franke certainly was bad enough before she started to work with Jodi Hildebrandt. But that would be the argument from a defense attorney's perspective, is that my client was brainwashed by Jodi Hildebrandt, and all the different clients that Jodi Hildebrandt has had basically will testify against, that has made complaints against her, would strengthen that case. So that's the sort of the defense. What the defense is saying is that Ruby Franke was twisted because of Jodi Hildebrandt. Let's play a little bit of this from Law and Crime.
Also agreed to testify against Jodi Hildebrandt if her case proceeds to trial, but will it even get that far? Main question is, how does Jodi Hildebrandt defend this? Before that, let me bring in Sky Lazaro, an experienced state and federal criminal defense attorney out in Utah and legal analyst for KUTV2 News and KUTV2.com. Sky, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, before we get into these potential defenses, not sure they're going to work, but we'll get into them. Do you think that Jodi is going to strike a deal with prosecutors and plead guilty? Because at the time of this recording, she has a date scheduled for December 27th.
I think she has to. I don't see any way around where you have a co-defendant who's taken a plea deal that involves prison and agreeing to testify against you and lays out the facts as succinctly as she did, that you really have any other option.
I agree with you, right? You have such a major witness. You have your co-defendant who seemingly was right there during all this to testify against you. But I have to imagine that not only would we see the similar kind of deal where there's no agreed upon sentence, when the judge sentences Jodi, she would get a far worse sentence than Ruby. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. You tell me.
Well, Utah has what's called indeterminate sentencing. So all a judge can do is sentence an individual to prison for concurrent or consecutive sentences. The amount of time each person does is dependent or is determined by the parole board.
So interesting. And who would have known that? That all the judge can do is basically mete out the sentence, but the time is determined by a parole board. So that's unusual. So let's digest that a little bit. Do you think parole boards are controlled or influenced by the politics surrounding this case? You bet. Uh, on the Mormon podcast, the Jodi Hildebrandt's niece said that based on her billing, most of the clients that she got were referred by the Church of Latter-day Saints. So does that make them at all culpable in this case? Does that make them possibly a co-defendant, not in the criminal case, but how about in the civil case? There's sure to be a civil case after this case is over with. So could the politics of this, could the specter of the religious nature of the clients being referred to Jodi Hildebrandt influence the parole board? And same with Ruby Franke. Could that influence the time she gets? She's already pled guilty to 4 charges. Jodi Hildebrandt has the same type of hearing that Ruby Franke went to, the waiver hearing, which she may also decide to plead guilty at. The waiver hearing, which is going to take place on Wednesday, December 27th at 11 a.m. Utah time. So my question is, and it seems to be semi-answered by this attorney, the parole board decides the amount of years. And let's play a little more of this because this attorney says something very interesting. Her prediction is, I think she says that she believes that Ruby Franke, even though she pled guilty to 4 felonies, that she'll do more than 4 to 6 years. Could that be a possibility too for Jodi Hildebrandt? I don't know. Let's listen.
And so, you know, they're kind of in a situation now. I don't think she's going to get a better deal. Ruby's deal was 4 of the 6 counts. They're not going to give Hildebrandt, you know, a screaming deal where they have someone who's willing to testify against her. But as far as time goes, or the amount of time that they're going to serve, that's not something the judge even has any control over.
So let me get this straight, just to understand. You're saying that because each charge is between 1 and 15 years in prison, the judge, I mean, theoretically, Ruby Franke, she pled guilty to 4 charges. She could face 60 years in prison for this?
She could, because they're run consecutive. Now, the way the sentencing matrix works in Utah is on consecutive sentences, which this will be on the 4 counts. She'll serve whatever the matrix time is that the board gives her on the lead charge. Now, in this case, they're all the same count, so it doesn't make any difference. But then she'd do 40% of that time on each consecutive count. So she's not going to do 60 years. She's, you know, probably, I'm just kind of guessing it's going to be in maybe the 4 to 6 year range.
Wow, that's the first time we heard someone say that's from Utah, that's familiar with the way the court works, that she may do no more than 4 to 6 years. She said she would do 40% of the 1 to 15, and then, you know, they could cut a deal, they could do this, they could do that. So very interesting, right? So 1 to 15, and the maximum, of course, is 15. So times 4 is 60. So you take 40% of that and then cut a little deal on top of that, a little cherry on top of that. This attorney predicts that she'll do no more than 4 to 6 years. So what does that mean for Jodi Hildebrandt? Is she going to cut a similar deal? And I'm very suspect because of the politics involved in this. And again, the religious specter, she was getting most of her clients referred to her by the church, the Mormon Church of Latter-day Saints. So that's not a good thing when you have people making allegations that you destroyed their life and destroyed their family. And does this come into play with this particular case, as we know all the charges on this case regarding the children? So how strong is it? Does the prosecution really want Jodi Hildebrandt? Do they really want a piece of her to prosecute her when they didn't prosecute Ruby Franke? They offered her a plea bargain, right? So the prediction is, and I predict this too, and many experts, and I'm not an expert in the legal part of this, you have attorneys that are from Utah, surely are, that she's going to be offered a deal. And one of the biggest reasons that she's going to be offered a deal, I believe, is they don't want the children to have to testify in a court. And so it'll be all null that the deal that Ruby Franke cut, she's probably not going to have to testify because Jodi Hildebrandt's going to be offered a deal also. Will it be worse? Will they? Don't forget, Ruby Franke had to plead guilty to 4 of the 6 felonies. Will they make Jodi Hildebrandt plead guilty to all 6? That's a distinct possibility. There go the difference right there. She could be forced to plead guilty to all 6 charges. Libby 3, 4 to 6 years, but those children, absolutely, Libby, that's so true. But, sometimes prosecutors will cut a deal for different reasons other than that, getting justice for the children. Yes, that's so important. But also, they don't want the children to be further traumatized so that they will have to testify. Shannon, that must be Shannon. It's up to the parole board to give her the sentence, not the judge. Yes, Shannon, that's what I just said, according to this attorney. The judge can just mete out what the sentence is, but the parole board will give the actual amount of time. And don't forget, the sentence is consecutive, not concurrent. So it must run one after another. It can't run at the same time. To me, concurrent sentencing makes no sense. It's just like, well, there's multiple charges and you're running at the same time. So how is the person punished for those other charges? I never understood concurrent sentencing. The only thing to me that ever made sense was consecutive. And in this case, single mom life. I do not believe that Ruby was so brainwashed to believe that what she did to her kids was going to help them. Ruby knew what she was doing was wrong when she did it. Single mom life, I happen to 100% agree with you. The other thing is, before she ever met or started working with Jodi Hildebrandt, she had her own podcast, 8 Passengers, and it goes back to 2015. She lost her podcast from YouTube because of complaints about some of the things that were going on from some of the people that watch, from the audience. More than 10 different complaints. The police had been to our house numerous times. So how a defense attorney can say that, oh, this had everything to do that Jodi Hildebrandt brainwashed Ruby Franke. No, I don't think that's going to sell with most people. We have an expression in New York, if you believe that, I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. That's the old New York expression. You want to buy the Brooklyn Bridge? Yeah, I'll sell that to you if you're that gullible that you're going to believe this. So yeah, this attorney, this is the first time I heard it, she said, so 4 consecutive sentences of 1 to 15 years in reality could equal 4 to 6 years in prison. This is according to the attorney that's on Law and Crime Sidebar. Here she is right now.
ish, maybe 7. And that's me guessing. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Wait, so that's so interesting. So you're saying when the sentencing happens, it's not like the judge says for count 1, 2 years, count 1, 5 years, count 1, 10 years. It's going to be just this is what the sentence is, and they run
Yeah.
consecutively, and we won't know. So we won't know how long she'll be in prison when the sentencing happens.
we will not. So all the judge will
Mm.
say is, I sentence you on count 1 to 1 to 15 years in the Utah State Prison, count 2, 1 to 15 years,
Oh
on and
wow.
on. And those counts to run consecutive to each other. And that's all the judge will say.
Mm.
And then she'll be transferred to the prison. After she's transferred to the prison, the parole board will get her file, will go through everything, and they'll give her what's called an original hearing date. And so that'll be the first time that she's actually going to learn probably at least the minimum amount of time she's going to do out there, subject to whatever programming they want her to do while she's there.
By the way, just real quick, any chance the judge would could not give her prison time, or is she definitely going to prison?
She's going to prison.
She's going to prison. And
Yeah.
based on what we know so far in this case, and clearly there's more details we don't know, and we're going to get into Jodi Hildebrandt's potential defenses in a second. Would you say that it would be easier for Ruby Franke to get parole than Jodi, assuming Jodi doesn't take a deal or ends up getting convicted, or even if she does take a deal? I mean, do you see one of these parties more legally responsible than the other?
I think it's less being legally responsible when you get to the parole board stage of things,
Mhm.
and more about the parole board wants to see people be reformed. So
Right.
that's sort of in the big push in Utah is this justice reinitiative.
Is anyone else seeing the politics behind this? I've mentioned numerous times, where is Kevin Franke in this whole situation? How is he skating? How is he not being held responsible whatsoever? I have a big problem with that. And till this is over with, is there anyone else out there that has a problem with that? Can you believe Kevin Franke is not? And again, he was out of the house for 14 months. So the most recent stuff he wasn't involved in. However, prior to that, he was down with all this. He was part of the 8 Passengers podcast. You think he just has no idea what was going on? Again, I have a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn if you believe that. A total single mom life. As a mother, no one could ever convince me that abusing my children is going to help them. These kids are not evil or possessed. They're innocent. I pray that they can get the help they need. Single mom life, 100%. As they say in New York, you're preaching to the choir. I love that expression. Anyway, so Jodi Hildebrandt. So she's coming up again on Wednesday, the 27th, 11 a.m. Utah time. She's going to her hearing, the waiver hearing, but I believe we can expect a plea of some kind. What she's offered probably will be more harsh than what Ruby Franke was offered. However, I predict a plea nonetheless.
Reform Act and treatment and rehabilitating people along with the punitive part of it. So she's going to get credit for the fact that she pleaded guilty and took responsibility off the top. And then if she does well in her programming and her treatment at the prison and continues to take responsibility and show to make an effort to make things get better, make things better, she's going to get a far earlier parole date than someone who goes out to the prison on the same charges who denies any culpability in it or any wrongdoing.
All right, let's get into some Jodi Hildebrandt defenses. Okay, so the first way that I looked at it was, what do we have right now at this time? Ruby has just admitted to all of it. Jodi hasn't. So is that a defense? You have Ruby who admitted what she did. Jodi didn't. What do you think?
One of the things before this attorney even answers this question here, Jodi Hildebrandt physically in her home had Ruby Franke's children there. So the condition they were in at least 80 to 90% be attributed to her. The duct tape, the tying them up, the emaciated them, not feeding them. That could be attributed to her almost directly. And of course, Ruby was living in that house also. She's 100% culpable to that. But they were living in Jodi Hildebrandt's home, that multi-million-dollar home we saw that wouldn't allow her to feed the children, And these things, Tank Girl, another podcast, said that Ruby will not serve more than 30 years. There's a limit to accumulation. Tank Girl, I don't think she's going to even get close to that. Yes, it's 1, 2. Each single count is 1 to 15. She could do 1. So 1 times 4 is 4. She could potentially do 4 years or 4 to something and then get paroled. And that doesn't mean she doesn't have those other years hanging over her head once she's released out on parole. And if she does anything wrong again, they could reinstitute the sentence. But I don't see her doing any heavy duty sentence like that. You see, the judge issues the sentence, the parole board decides on the amount of years. So there's a lot of hidden politics to this case. I really believe that. I really believe that. Pre-C, the Mormon Church funded Jodi. This was church-sanctioned, abuse. Yeah, I believe that's true. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, we always speak about, but even if Tank Girl, but even if she got the max of 4 times 15 would be limited to 30. Okay, that's fair. But I don't think she's going to serve anywhere near any of those times. I think she's, like this attorney said, she's looking at maybe 4 to 6. And will Jodi Hildebrandt, I think her sentence should be much more severe than Ruby Frankie's, because I think that to me, she's just a mean, mean woman, And the fact that she's supposed to be like a therapist that's supposed to help people. Instead, she's really like torturing people. And as I said, the elephant in the room is the Church of Latter-day Saints referring clients to her, paying her. They were paying the bills, according to her niece, right? They were paying her. It's scary, right? And so part 2 to this could very well be a civil case. But let's get through the criminal case first. Let's go back to law and crime here.
It's tough because what the statute says is the actor commits aggravated child abuse if they inflict the serious bodily injury themselves, which Ruby Frankie has agreed to, or having care or custody of a child causes or permits another to do so. So that's a tough one. I don't know that she gets past the subsection 2B just by saying Ruby did it. I was just there. I didn't have anything to do with it. It was all her. The fact that she was present and allowed it to happen makes her guilty under the statute. Potentially guilty under the statute.
And assuming this all happened at Jodi's place, at her residence, but I don't know, she left for the day. She wasn't there when the abuse happened. She didn't really pay attention. That wouldn't be enough, right? Like she can't
that's none of that's that's meaningless. First of all, the kids were emaciated. To be malnourished takes several months. So it didn't happen overnight. You know what I mean? So this defense is ridiculous. For kids to be malnourished could, take 2 to 3 months slowly, and besides, we're not even talking about the other injuries. But so for that to be a defense is totally it's off the table as far as I'm concerned.
feign ignorance to what's happening. Because let's say she didn't direct Ruby to abuse the children, but she allowed Ruby to stay there and kind of turned a blind eye. That wouldn't be a defense?
Possibly if she didn't know. Turning a blind eye would not be a defense. Not knowing is a potential defense because the mental state required under this statute or for aggravated child abuse of these things were happening. It was done out of her presence. It's a tough argument if it's happening in your home versus if you're just in and out or, tangentially around. I think that gets harder, but she could say, I didn't know.
I don't think that's really a defense that she didn't know. As I said, the children were emaciated. They were malnourished. How could she not know? And she lives there. I mean, yeah, defense attorneys sometimes come up with ridiculous arguments. To me, that sounds like a ridiculous argument. Folks, first of all, Merry Christmas. Second of all, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime, from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed to us, what are you doing? Go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. And if you want to contribute to us, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. And you can join us on our YouTube and become a channel member of this channel, where we have some extra stuff we do for the channel members. And you could join us for that. Folks, if you need a great attorney in the New York metropolitan area, then Joe Murray is your man. Joe is a retired NYPD police officer turned defense attorney. You can catch Joe on his cell, or you can reach him on his cell phone at 718-514-3855. Email him at joe@jmurray-law.com, or go on his website, jmurray-law.com. Not only is Joe a fantastic defense attorney, but a huge supporter of the Police Off the Cuff podcast. And we appreciate Joe and all the help and all the support he's done over the years here. So again, my prediction and a lot of people's predictions, and I see a lot of you guys in the chat, many people that have followed this case, of course, want both Ruby and Jodi to get a substantial prison term. I didn't think I saw anyone in the chat at any time say that they want Ruby to get leniency, or they want Jodi to get leniency. Did the children get leniency? No. So most of you guys, if not all of you guys, are looking. Pauline Buckles, Merry Christmas, Bill, and everyone here. Unfortunately, I can't tune in. Love you all. Pauline, thank you so much for that, and have a wonderful day today. And I'm sure we'll see you real soon. So most of you guys and gals, I say guys, it's sort of a term that addresses everyone, think that they both should do a substantial prison term. And I think that would be justice. I think if one of them or both of them walked out and served no prison time, that would be a miscarriage of justice, because they need punishment in this case. Absolutely 100% that they need and deserve punishment. Because we got to remember who the victims were in this case. And the most egregious case of all is that when children are hurt. And that is just a horrendous thing. Venus Gal, I haven't entirely followed this case. I know enough, but don't follow it. I've about had it with Sorry, the LDS cases of abuse of murder of children. They are podcasters with following, shaking my head. Venus Gal, I hear a lot of that, and I don't mean to ever ignore it. And we talk about it being the elephant in the room. But there's more people, for example, folks right in Utah, that have more boots on the ground knowledge of that. We're reporting this based on what we're hearing from people that know the culture, they know the area, they know the power of the church. And it's just not, when you see some of these really horrific cases involving religions, it's not just the Church of Latter-day Saints. There's others. We've had the pedophile problem in the Catholic Church, and many other religions have had that same problem. And we've seen how it has been handled. And how has it been handled? It's been swept under the rug for a lot of times. In some cases, civilly, the church has had to pay out millions and millions of dollars. Missy Blue, she's not being charged under the 8 passengers. She's being charged for the abuse to her 2 youngest children have happened in the last 3 months. I think it was that they were, yes, Missy Blue, you're right. But if it ever went to trial, they could bring that up to show that she doesn't have, that she has culpability, that this just did not start when she became aligned with Jodi Hildebrandt. There was a history of this. So you're absolutely correct, Missy Blue. Yes, what she's being charged with was the situation in the last, let's say, the last 14 months. And those are the 14 months that her husband, Kevin, was booted out of the house and had no contact with them, which I find not believable. That he's trying to distance himself from it so that he's not culpable for this. But I'm not buying that situation at all. I'm buying that over time. Missy Blue, again, you're commenting, being tortured, heaven was not there, and Kevin was not there, and they're not being charged. No, Missy Blue, I understand that. But we're saying that if you did go back to this, he does have some culpability. And who says that they couldn't charge them for that? Right? Was there ever charges brought in regards to that? There wasn't, was there? I don't think they're within the statute of limitations. I don't see that. Venus Gal, but that's true, the Catholic priest thing, but so is the LDS thing true. Doesn't mean all members are bad, of course, but it still happened in both, etc. It's a fact. Daybell alone, this is one more. Venus Gal, I'm just trying to present a level playing field. And I said, there's almost all religions have problems like this. Whether it's the pedophile priest situation in the Catholic Church, these situations in the Church of Latter-day Saints, there's problems in almost every type of religion with this. And it's how they deal with it and how the authorities deal with it and how the people deal with it that go up against a huge, rich, and powerful entity such as a religion. And that's the story with this.
That's potential defense.
How do you cross-examine Ruby Franke if she testifies against Jodi? So again, she'll be the star witness. I personally believe that if this does go to trial, one of the reasons they wanted Ruby Franke to plead guilty was so that the children wouldn't have to testify. Ruby will explain everything that happened.
That's 100%. I said that earlier, that they may even offer a plea deal to Jodi Hildebrandt because they don't want the children to have to testify, to become further traumatized than they already are. So, but I believe that whatever plea deal she's offered is going to be a higher level than the one offered to Ruby Franke. I think that she may be offered to plead to all 6 charges, and then let's roll the dice as to what the sentence will be. I'm sure the judge will issue some type of plea bargain for the sentence, but I think that she's going to have to plead to all 6, not 4. So because I find that her behavior, she's more culpable, she's more egregious, and that's just my opinion on this case.
How do you cross-examine her?
Cross-examining a snitch or someone who turns on their co-defendant is always fun for a defense attorney, right? Because you get to beat up on them for, you're just doing this because you got a deal. Now, in this case, it's not a good deal. She were getting a deal not to go to prison to testify. That starts to look a lot more promising and carry a little bit more weight, I think, when you say those things to a jury. In this case, where she's agreed to prison, it makes it a little tougher. But I think really what the cross-examination is, part of it is you always get into why you're pointing the finger. The state made you do it. You did it for a deal. And actually, you're the person who did this. I mean, you get to beat them up on the stand for everything they did, that they're now saying, well, that other person stood there and watched or helped. Yep. Or, so I think that's probably, the most effective way to cross-examine her in this case.
Hey there, everybody. Give the gift of whiskey this holiday season with the Whiskey Raiders Bottle of the Month Club. You see, each month, the experts at Whiskey Raiders, they send
Sorry, guys, I didn't mean for that that free commercial to run for law and crime on my channel. So that's sort of an eye opener. A different way sentencing is handled in Utah in regards, as compared to New York. In New York, the judge determines the sentence, not the parole board. The parole board in New York decides once someone serves a big chunk of their sentence, whether they get released and what the conditions will be of their parole, but never do they decide the amount of years that someone's going to do. That's the first I heard. That's unusual. So will Jodi, will she have to testify? Excuse me, will Ruby have to testify against Jodi Hildebrandt? And that's one of the things that is the big question. And again, my prediction is that she will never testify, that it will be Jodi Hildebrandt's going to be offered a plea, much like Ruby Franke was. And in that plea, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but this is my opinion, she's going to have to plead to six of the charges, not 4, like Ruby Franke was. So it seems that could be a much more difficult sentence, or a longer sentence, because 6 felonies as compared to 4. And that's my opinion. I think that's the deal that she's going to be offered. Now, we'll see if, in fact, that is true. But again, let's play a little more of this. This is a different law and crime. Put this up on the screen.
And she agrees, I'll read this one verbatim. She agrees to testify truthfully against Jodi Hildebrandt, and in return, the Washington County Attorney's Office agrees to remain neutral regarding future hearings before the Utah Board of Pardons.
That was the prosecutor outside of court when this happened. So what does all of this mean for Jodi Hildebrandt? Well, I had an opportunity to sit down with Brian Schnee, anchor and reporter for KUTV2 News out of Utah, who has been actively following this case, to talk about what all of this means for Jodi. Now, here's a warning. I actually interviewed him before Ruby Franke's court appearance. He was actually outside the courtroom or courthouse when we were speaking. So just to give you an idea, what we're talking about is before she officially pled guilty, before we saw this plea deal, we saw the details of this plea agreement. So just keep that in mind. But here you go. Ryan, good to see you. First, let everybody know where you are right now at the time of this recording.
Right now in St. George, Utah, as Ruby Franke goes into court here in just a few hours at the time of our conversation. So what's interesting about this case is Ruby's rooted in northern Utah. We are in southern Utah, which is where Jodi Hildebrandt's home is. So we're about 25, 30 minutes from Ivins, which is where all of this went down.
When you see, it's on the screen right now, this like palatial estate belonging to Jodi Hildebrandt, and then you contrast that with what occurred, it's just really that much more disgusting. Obviously this is a home to me, and I don't know real estate in Utah. It looks to me like a $3 or $4 million home. Outrageous, right? And then she's really her practice of family counseling. She's really destroying people's lives. And here she's living in this palatial estate, and she's getting referred clients by the church. So what's wrong with this picture? Something's very, very wrong. Very, very wrong.
Months ago now, but Ruby and Jodi have been here locally, about 10 minutes from where I'm sitting at Purgatory Correctional Facility. So Ruby Franke's waiver hearing is today, and that's why we are here, and we'll be in court for that.
Now, let's be entirely clear about this. The reason you and I had this conversation, I think it was about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago, the terrific reporting from your team is what first broke it for us about this waiver hearing. And we were talking about, well, what could be a waiver hearing? And we know that a waiver hearing was essentially waiving a preliminary hearing. And could it be that they just, from a legal point of view, didn't want that hearing to be broadcast? Was there another consideration? Or could it possibly be that a plea has been entered or a plea is being negotiated? We talked about this.
So we spoke about all of this. Yes, this was prior to Ruby Frankie. This was prior to her going into court. And as we saw her plead guilty, she seemed to be struggling with admitting to it. And then at one point, she made a statement that she wanted to apologize to her family. But watching, I mean, she struggled. You could see on her face, she almost didn't want to say it. But at the same time, I didn't see a lot of sorrow, a lot of redemption. You know, I just saw just that same attitude she had when she treated her children poorly. So I didn't see on her face that I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. You know, I think she's more sorry that her life has been turned upside down, that she's going to prison. You know, don't forget, Ruby Frankie and Jodi Hildebrandt have been in jail since August 30th. Today's date's December 25th, right? So they're on their fourth month, almost 4 full months of being in jail. And I described to everyone the other day the difference between jail and prison. Jail is somewhere you can be. It's almost like a holding pattern. You can be in a jail pre-conviction. And if you're, so you it's for misdemeanors and it'll hold you pre-conviction unless you're post bail and they let you out. And the most amount of time you're supposed to stay in a jail is less than a year. And that's the definition, you know, that when you say what is a crime is a felony or a misdemeanor. The sentence for a misdemeanor is up to, but usually less than 1 year, up to a year. A felony, a conviction for a felony is more than a year, and you do your time in a state prison. So that's the difference. Many people don't know that. They don't realize that. I just wanted to define that because, you know, we frequently mix up the word jail and prison. Prison, you know, in New York, they would say, oh, you're going upstate because all of the prisons are upstate in the, you know, northern part of New York State, not in, there's one state prison in Westchester, and that happens to be Sing Sing, a famous prison called Sing Sing. But for the most part, most of the prisons in New York State are upstate. So I don't know in Utah, but the same thing. That's the difference between a jail and a prison. I just thought I would give you that differentiation. Candy Ledette, yes, makes you wonder how far would Ruby have gone and how long she would have kept Kevin away from his kids. He'd have seen their little bodies and their injuries. Candy Ledette, I think you're probably right. And that's why this case is, it's very disturbing, you know. I'm sorry, I was trying to get K-Pick. In Ohio, we say we're going down the road because it's out west. Yeah, it's very similar to New York State. If you're going to prison, they'll say, oh, he's going up the river because the Hudson River goes upstate, you know, and those are the terms, you know. The last mile, they used to call it, you know, different things and different states have different terms for their state prisons. This was one of the people that Mary Michael, thank you so much. Sergeant Bill, Merry Christmas to you and yours. Thank you so much for sharing part of your Christmas day with us. So much fun to wish my chat buddies and you a Merry Christmas. You are a truly kind, compassionate man to include us in your day. Mary Michael, thank you so much. Thank you for your generosity. I had to negotiate a little bit. I had to do all the dishes and stuff like that in order to negotiate an hour away from family festivities today at this time. But thank you so much for your generosity. And you guys, thank you so much for also all you guys pulling yourself away from your Christmas day, morning, afternoon, evening festivities to join me, because it's very much appreciated that you're joining me right now.
When he lived in Idaho as a child, he then moved to Utah. He became married, and that's when he met Jodi Hildebrandt. When did you first encounter Jodi Hildebrandt?
So My Mormon bishop asked me to go, me and my wife, to go to her. I had just finished passing the statute of limitations in Idaho for criminal and civil sexual child abuse. They had this bizarre statute for 5 years. And I had changed that with my dad and a lot of people that we had done a grassroots.
This is Adam Steed, who he was referred to Jodi Hildebrandt by the elders of the church. And he went there and she basically, whatever counseling and advice he was looking for in his marriage, she just destroyed him and his marriage. She just blew it apart. And that's his story. And he wasn't the only one that told this story about Jodi Hildebrandt. There were many others.
Movement together, and I moved down to Utah, and I had just finished a settlement case with Boy Scouts of America. And then, like, immediately afterwards, my bishop asked me to go to Jodi Hildebrandt with my wife for therapy.
Adam Steed says he and his wife were seeking counseling for ordinary issues that come up in any marriage.
Yeah, just normal marriage issues. Outside the fact there was a lot of stress on our marriage because we had done a settlement for child abuse with Boy Scouts of America, and we were having we had a 1-year-old baby and we had a newborn coming along, and we were both in school at Brigham Young University trying to do all of our credits, and my ex-wife had some issues as well that were kind of difficult, and I had trauma from what happened to me in the past, and we were just trying to be normal people and live a normal life and start and have a beautiful life after some of the things we'd gone through. It's hard for me to talk about this stuff because it's so traumatic.
What year was this that you were being counseled by Jodi Hildebrandt?
2008. We just finished the scouting settlement. I think I had the psych evaluation for the damage it had done to me somewhere in like the late fall. And then I think around Christmas or winter or something, we had settled this case, or somewhere in the early January or February. And I think it was in April that I had started therapy with Jodi Hildebrandt, a group therapy with Jodi Hildebrandt with me and my wife.
So there you have, there's one very unsatisfied customer, I should put it that way. Not a satisfied customer, unsatisfied. And there were many people like this that after counseling, after they were referred to Jodi Hildebrandt by the church, their whole life blew up. Whatever they went to her for, whatever counseling, she made it 10 times worse. And this is according to many people that have since come forward. Mary Michael Sergeant Bill, you are a godsend today. My Christmas dinner host was struck down by the flu, so I'm making homemade chicken soup. I'm no Rachella Prenzo in the kitchen. She's an expert. I can do enough to get by. Mary Michael, I hope you have a wonderful day. Chicken soup is good. Chicken soup, they say there's something in chicken soup that'll cure the common day cold. That was told to me by my science teacher many years ago. Pressy, please take note. Mormon bishops are just men from the community. They have zero training in psychology or anything else. So people are essentially telling their secrets to a car mechanic. That's unfortunate, And I think that this case will also send some warnings out to the licensing bureaus of therapists, of family counselors, that when there are complaints made, and I know that Jodi Hildebrandt had lost her license years ago, lost her license to be a therapist. And basically she got a slap on the wrist for it and started counseling again. Just think of the money she made doing that. You see the size of her house, right? Venus Gal, we had our big family Christmas last weekend, so today is kicked back. Daughter was over last night, overnight, and just for a kickback visit and left this morning. Now a free day to just kick back. Good for you, Venus Gal. Relax and kick it back, as you say, and have a wonderful day. Mystique, good to see you. Cheryl F., good to see you. Tank Girl, Jodi had her license suspended after disclosing info about Adam to the church. Bishop, right, Jodi had violated client, the client, patient, and the therapist confidentiality agreement that is, it is supposed to be so sacred to a therapist or a doctor or a lawyer. That's why you never talk about cases. Or at least if you talk about a case, you never divulge the person's name that you're speaking about. You frequently, if you ever took a psychology class, for example, in college, a therapist who's teaching a course may talk about a specific case, but will never mention who the person is. Same thing with an attorney, right? Same thing with a doctor. And that's where the HIPAA laws, where confidentiality for your healthcare is also sacred. And even law enforcement, to get information about someone's healthcare, they need to get a court order, subpoenas, to get that information. And it should be a secret. It should be personal. It should be something that only is between you and your doctor, you and your therapist. So that's what Jodi Hildebrandt lost her license for. Penny C, after everything he went through in getting Jodi, poor soul, how can Jodi get a plea deal? Thank you for all of your time and keeping us informed. This is true too. Penny, I think that like these plea deals, Lou Lemoracco, wishing everyone a very Merry Christmas. Thank you, Bill. Lou, thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope that's your horse, too. What a beautiful horse that is. I have such a bad history of horseback riding. I not that I did it a lot, but the times I went, I was always going down as the horse was coming up, and so I was violently hitting the horse, and I never got it's almost like a rhythm you have to have when you ride a horse. I never got that. It seemed, people always it seems so simple to ride. It's not that simple, and I think it takes a lot of practice. And one day maybe I'll learn how to ride it, but I don't have it now. I was always going down as the horse was coming up, and the collision right with the saddle. But it was still fun. It's horses are beautiful, beautiful animals. So guys, I was just wanted to come on today for about an hour, and we're almost at that hour right now. But I want to use the last few minutes just to really thank all you guys who have been my audience, my friends, my fans, my subscribers in 2023. I can almost not even say that date, 2023, and we're going into 2024. And so much, as they say, water under the bridge, so many different cases we covered, so many different guests we had. So much about doing this is a labor of love, but also that comes with it a lot of work, a ton of work, some stress. You wouldn't think I shouldn't be stressed at all because there's no reason, but I do. That's just my personality. Choosy Heretics Choose Carnation Revolution Now became a YouTube member. Well, thank you so much for joining our channel. Very much appreciated. So I just wanted to give you my perspective of doing this show. And again, as I said, it's a labor of love. I love doing it, and I love being able to talk to you guys and have people from all over the world. It really is amazing. You get people in Ireland, people in England. I used to have a lot of people in Australia. There were just people from all over the place, South Africa. And it was always amazing to me. It's like, how did these people find out about my show, And how did these people say, Bill, we love your accent, How did that happen? But anyway, I just want to wish everyone the most amazing Christmas. Give a hug to your favorite person on this earth, and hug your friends, your family, and tell them that you love them. This is the show for today, and I'll see you probably on, well, if not before that, I'll definitely see you on Wednesday. I'm going to try to cover the hearing as it occurs. That's the Jodi Hildebrandt's hearing. But until then, everyone, have a Merry Christmas and God bless. Have a great day.
One episode just ain't enough.